Hello there and welcome to another Loofy vlog. I am Seleuf the Spoopy Loofy, and today I'll be talking about World of Warcraft, specifically the Night Elves, and a little bit of what's going to happen in patch 8.1. More specifically the Night Elven religion and Elune. What they are, how they are or aren't portrayed in game and lore, and how they could be portrayed. Let's start with the absolute basics. Night Elves worship the moon goddess Elune. But what does that actually mean? I've found that even veteran Warcraft roleplayers can be rather hazy on this point, but not without reason. Blizzard have been intentionally vague about what Elune actually is, and there's a lot of conflicting information and red herrings out there. Night Elves were originally dark trolls who gathered on the banks of the Well of Eternity. They believed the moon went into the well during the daylight hours and came back out at night, and they supposedly spoke to Elune through the well. But the Well of Eternity was a haphazard band-aid of sorts by the Titans to seal the wound they made in Azeroth when they ripped some old god out. It was a wound that bled arcane magic. More on that later. So some think Elune is actually the Azeroth Titan herself. Yes, Azeroth is a Titan, or there's a Titan inside Azeroth, it's confusing, okay? The point is, to support this idea, the Tears of Elune are cited, as they are one of the pillars of creation and all the other pillars of creation are named after Titans. But Elune grants her priestesses holy light stuff, not arcane, which is the power of the Titans, which leads many to think Elune is actually a Naru. For this, people cite Elune's holy light magic, and that the Tears of Elune are used to wake Light's heart, the very heart of the prime Naru Zera. As well, when the Night Elves tell Prophet Velen about Elune, he says it sounds an awful lot like his experiences with the Naru. He offers to teach the Night Elves how to better communicate with the supposed Naru Elune, but Tyrande tells him to STFU, basically. But even if Elune were a Naru, there is speculation that she's no ordinary Naru. Because what other Naru qualifies to make a pillar of creation, and could a mere Naru wake Light's heart with said fragment of self? In fact, it's speculated that Elune is a step above the Naru and actually created Zera and the Naru. Which is very interesting and would certainly put her in Light's corner as opposed to Arcane. But I'm going to contest all of this, because in each of these speculations there's a lot of stuff people seem to be forgetting. Number 1. Elune's light is not the same as the holy light which Naru and Paladins use. Sweeping aside superficial differences in the belief systems, the holy light is the worship of light magic itself. The holy light has no real will, and does not care who you are or what you're using it for. We see evidence of this in Sir Zeliek, an undead using the light in service of the Scourge. We also see, quite clearly, Blood Elven Paladins and Human Paladins using the light against each other in PvP. War fronts and other story elements. Also, spoiler, I'll put a little thing up in the corner until I'm done saying the spoiler, Yrel on alternate Draenor has taken to using the holy light to subjugate the orcs in a join us and serve the light or die kind of way. That's not exactly a harmonious approach, and we're likely going to end up fighting her at some point. End of spoiler. Meanwhile, Elune has a will and takes independent action, as we saw when Ysera died. Also when Ysera died, we saw Elune's power centered around the moon, not Azeroth. Also worth noting, Elune's light seems to be white and blue, not white and yellow like the holy light and Naru stuff. Number 2, bet you forgot this was a list. Elune is not light alone. Elune is shadow too. Elune gifted the Night Elves with their Shadow Meld ability, and supposedly gave the Night Sabers their black and silver coats to better hide in the shadows of the night. And there is nothing light about Elune's Night Warrior aspect. 8.1 spoiler, Tyrande goes through a ritual to become closer to the Night Warrior, and her silver eyes go black, and that becomes a cosmetic option for all Night Elf players thereafter. End of spoiler. How is it even possible, you ask? Isn't Shadow void? Is Elune an old god? Well, no, because old gods don't use light. Shadow actually seems to exist as 2, if not even 3 different things. There's the void, which Blizzard are very much pushing and expanding upon currently. But that's a relatively new thing in Blizzard's lore. Before then, and still in use, is the shadow that warlocks and demons use. Demons are the enemy of the void, and vice versa. If the void had monopoly on shadow magic, they probably wouldn't let their enemies, the demons, use it. Death Knights and Necromancers also use shadowy death magic. And even between them it'd be different because Death Knights use rune magic. However, rune magic has been said to be a more natural way of accessing the arcane. So Death Knights, Necromancers, and Warlocks and Demons who use Fel, which is a corrupted form of arcane, all seem to suggest that there is an arcane version of Shadow. Then we have the Cult of the Forgotten Shadow. Where the Church of the Light focuses solely on the light, the Cult of the Forgotten Shadow view all of reality as being a blend of light and darkness, and recognize the shadow plane as an integral part of the universe woven into every other plane of existence. According to some sources, if one goes too far into this form of shadow, one doesn't go all purply and sprout tentacles and get brainwashed by old gods. No. Rather, one becomes a shadow ascendant, a powerful being of living shadow that does not appear to have any ties to the void. As well, the shadow realm that Death Knights enter, and that dead players go to, doesn't seem to have anything to do with the void either. It's not purply, there are no tentacles, no eyeballs on stalks, none of that. I'd actually guess that the void is just a faction that wishes it had monopoly over shadow. Much like the Naru seem to claim all credit for light, despite their origins being a mortal species that ascended via light power. Or perhaps more like the blue dragonflight under Malygos, trying to claim monopoly over all arcane magic. Light, shadow, and arcane are greater than and beyond all these factions. Which brings me to my third point. Elune is not just light or shadow, she's got arcane in her corner as well. Yeah, I said it. She created the Moonkin according to lore. Druids assume the Moonkin form when they choose the balance spec, and a lot of the spells used by both balance druids and Moonkin are the same. And a lot of those spells don't just have arcane in the flavor text, they deal arcane type damage. Not light, not shadow, arcane spells with arcane damage. Most notably, the ones having to do with stars and the moon. You might argue that druids are not Elune's disciples, but Cenarius's. But Cenarius is the son of Elune and Malorn, and supposed to be teaching nature magic. And in either case, according to lore, it's still Elune who created the Moonkin, not Cenarius. And if Elune is somehow connected to the Well of Eternity, that's pretty much pure arcane right there. A fountain of arcane, when it's not being corrupted by something else. Given everything we've talked about so far, or rather that I've been monologuing about, but post comments down below if you want to discuss any of this. Elune wields all 3 known cornerstones of the universe, truly making her the closest thing we've seen so far to a deity in the Warcraft universe. Especially considering that the Titans, who are described as godlike and akin to gods, only use arcane magic and fear shadow. So, what have Blizzard done with this? Not a whole lot, actually. Some may say this is a good thing, that Elune should not be more defined, that the mystery is what makes Elune special. Which is fair enough, but what about the religion on the ground? I find Blizzard aren't very good at portraying religion, which I can't necessarily be mad at them for. I myself was pretty crap at religion stuff until Actually, I might still be crap at it, but I've made an effort these past couple of years to learn. And I've learned enough to know that Blizzard aren't doing as much as they could be doing. They're not exploring what they have offered. For example, we know female night elves get facial tattoos as a rite of passage. We don't know what each tattoo means, or what else is involved in the rite of passage, or who does the tattoos on them. Is it a matriarch? Can a man do it? And speaking of, we don't know why this doesn't apply to male night elves. If they play a part in the female rite of passage, if they have their own equivalent rite, etc., etc. And we don't know of any other rites or rituals outside of Druidism. Which is really odd considering Druidism is a boys' club, while it's the women who rule society and the priesthood and the actual worship of Elune. The most information you can find on Elune worship, rites and rituals, the significance of the tattoos, festivals and ceremonies, foods and drinks, and what is and isn't allowed according to the culture and the religion, are all from fan headcanon and speculations. That's not to say that speculations are necessarily bad, or that fan guides are bad. I mean, I've written a few myself, and I'm doing a fair bit of speculation here. What I'm disagreeing with is the lack of concrete lore in these areas. And I respectfully disagree with those that say that is preferable because it allows a lot more room for the players to come up with stuff, because you can still create your own little sect within concrete lore, which is what I did. Taking everything that is said about Elune as the concrete lore and everything else as just speculation, but still wanting to play some of that everything else, I went ahead and made a sect. Night Owls have always fascinated me, but the severe vagueness or even utter lack of lore in some areas delayed my ability to roleplay them, since I wanted to do it right but couldn't find out what right was. I actually found Night Elves much harder to roleplay than Death Knights, and everyone says Death Knights are the hardest to portray. But I've done my best to research what does exist, and read fan guides and speculations and headcanons and what does and doesn't fit with the lore that we have. And finally, in January 2017, I made the guild I always wanted to make. A traditionalist Night Elven guild led by women and holding the worship of Elune as a central pillar, following the phases of the moon and letting it guide and shape their daily lives through light and shadow. But, not arcane, because culturally we hate mages and just sort of ignore that the balance spec uses arcane. It's divine Elune magic, clearly. However, because I involved a divine form of shadow in their worship, and had them actually using shadow magic in the name of Elune, with shadow and discipline priests in-characterly being those specs, I wasn't sure how open the general player base would be to the idea. In fact, I was afraid to advertise it at all, both in and out of character. Despite the existence of Shadow Meld and the lore of the Nightsaber stripes and other tidbits like that, I imagined Night Elven Society, or at least the player-base Elven Society, as being opposed to shadow magic in all its forms, kind of in the way they are opposed to arcane in a lot of cases, despite the arcane of the balance spec, or literally any body of water containing some of the Well of Eternity, including the lake under the World Tree Nordrasil on Mount Hajal, and every sacred moonwell. Yeah, look it up. So I imagined my Light and Shadow Guild as being a sect, hidden away and recruiting in secret, working in the interests of the Night Elven people without anyone even knowing that they're there or what they're doing. Which is why you haven't heard of them before. Then Battle for Azeroth came along, and patch 8.1 was announced, and spoilers leaked out. And suddenly my little sect didn't seem so far-fetched anymore. Which is what motivated me to make this video and actually try to get my little guild out into the open. It's called Nightwalkers of the Vale, and exists both on Argent Dawn and the 3 merged servers of Steamweedle Cartel, Moonglade, and the Shatar. If you have any questions about the guild, or Elune, or anything else I said in the video, drop a comment below. I'm happy to answer questions and engage in healthy debates. Unfortunately, this has been a very tough month for me, and I am way behind schedule, so I'm gonna have to end the video here. But if there's enough positive feedback, I'll make a sequel video. So, if you liked the video, click like. If you liked it a lot, consider sharing it around and subscribing to my channel. It really helps me out a lot and will make my day. You can also follow me in all these places for all sorts of updates and unique content. I am Seleuf everywhere. While the most important stuff reaches all of them, I do post a lot of different things on each platform, so it's definitely worth following me on more than one. Links in the description below. Actually, I'm not doing that this time. Because chair. And cave. And... bye!